it's the perfect time to sit down and open up a new Unity project so we can slap together some code that will probably look like someone dumped some SpaghettiOs into my Visual Studio and cry until we have something that resembles a game. Alright, let's jump right into it. So lacking inspiration, I joined Weekly Game Jam number 155. The thing is, the jam had already started and there were 3 days left, so instead of challenging myself to make the game in a week, let's make orange juice out of lemons and challenge myself to 72 hours to make a game. The theme of the jam was the word cycle. I knew the typical ideas would be about bikes and wheels and stuff, but I am anything but typical. I am what the experts call dumb. So I thought a little out of the box and decided to make a game about recycling. My game would be somewhat based on Subway Surfers. The game would be an infinite runner taking place on a single road. You're a trash can, metaphorically and literally, and the goal would be to catch bits of recycling as they're thrown at you from random points on the side of the road. You would quickly need to move under these recyclables to catch them as you move further along the road. Dropping a certain amount of items in a row would be a game over. To make this more interesting, I wanted to add some randomly generated obstacles in the road, so the user would need to maneuver around them while simultaneously trying to collect the recyclables. This would become increasingly more difficult over time. To start, we need some sort of environmentally friendly satanic vortex of a trash can that could fit these infinitely generating disposables, similar to that of Mary Poppins' purse. So I opened a Pro Builder and started modeling the player. After what felt like lining up the world record amount of dominoes translated to 3D modeling, my bin looked a bit like a meat grinder on wheels, but that would do for now. I temporarily attached the camera to the player without code, but eventually changed that. Also made the player move forward constantly with some controls for maneuvering. Moving forward is cool and all, but in case you didn't know, infinity is an abstract concept, and we need to make it a reality by giving our infinitely moving player an infinitely generating environment. But the only thing brain dead enough to do a task infinitely besides myself, of course, is a computer, and more specifically the Unity game engine, so let's do it. I created the infinitely generating land with a simple chunk prefab and script attached. Chunks spawn in front of each other when required and are always destroyed after use. Easy to explain, sort of time consuming to code, but we have it. They say it takes a game dev to make the game world that makes the village that it takes to make the village in Unity. So I added some randomly generated houses on the sides of the road. I pulled these from the free low poly houses pack on Unity, stored them in a Guantanamo array, and we have our village. Looking at my recycling bin makes me want to shove my head into its meat grinder looking opening, so let's take our boy Bin Bog Baggins and try modeling him in Blender without getting mad at the axes labels being different than the ones in Unity. And goddamn toss my lettuce, we've gone from a garbage Pro Builder model to a more environmentally friendly model of a garbage disposal that is unironically a little less garbage. However, catching with our bin still feels like a throwback to my Little League baseball days in right field, so let's fix that and make catching a little easier for the player. Instead of launching from a fixed point in world space, the recyclable would launch from the side and follow the player with the camera so it's always in sight. Combine this with landing indicators and things are feeling a lot nicer with the catch. Played with the speed just for giggles, but ended up realizing the houses were overlapping after a while. Figured out the problem was every time a chunk loaded, it kept the houses from the previous chunk, so eventually it would become a fire festival of overlapping houses. This was an easy fix, just needed to clear the houses at the start of every chunk. While I was on the houses, I wanted to retexture them to make them more of my own. But just like how my parents talk about the idea of having me, this was a terrible idea. The retextures ended up looking really terrible, and when it looked like the roof was made out of logs of shit, I knew it was time to give up on my retexturing dream. At this point, I started treating my game like makeup in that I needed it more visually appealing to compensate for the lack of interesting content. I definitely don't wear makeup when no one's around, so let's forget I said that and add a new skybox, some basic post-processing, and materials. For my recycling items, I went with some more Unity store assets, but didn't want to upset the recycling subreddit, and did some research on what is most commonly recycled to give the game some realism, I guess, if that's even possible in a game like this. Then hit up Turbo Squad and the Unity asset score, where I definitely didn't get distracted at all, and figured swapping in these assets would be super easy. They were not. Once I imported them, I needed to pretty much redo all of the forces and rigid body settings to get the items to not fall too short or overshoot. I added a trail renderer to the wheels, made a better indicator texture, and made it scale down as they get closer to the ground. Now that my indicator system has the solidity of non-Newtonian fluid, I fixed the camera, which was the last thing holding back the cat. This really helped, but was a little bummed that the player wasn't able to look far ahead or even see the skybox I had put there. I increased the detection box for the bin so the player could touch the the recycling item with any part of the bin and still get the points. Made a score counter and a UI element to go with it, and we have numbers. While it was fun to see the recycling bin try its hand in trapeze, this didn't really work for my game, so I locked the player rotation. I liked that the trash could tip as it moved side to side and thought it added a lot of life to the player, but figured I could do this in animation. Didn't actually get to do that, but boo-hoo, I'm not gonna cry about it. Decided to suffer some more, so I went back to Blender and created my first obstacle. Chitty chitty vroom vroom. I stayed up until 2 AM watching Diesel Games tutorial on modeling, and I gotta say that my car actually looks kinda good if you were a soccer mom on a budget. I wanted the cars to be like the trains and Subway Surfers, except they come from in front as well as behind the player. So I made a car spawner and gave the cars warning lines to give the player a little tap on the shoulder before they'd get hit by death levels of G-force. My other two obstacles would be my main ones, which were the cones and blockades. These would be randomly spawned and show up more frequently than the cars to create the multitasking of weaving and retrieving, a term which I'm coining and I'm way too proud of. The blockades didn't end the game, but instead held the player back. After jumping some hurdles with the collisions and the blockades, that was pretty much all set. Believe it or not, we're actually starting to look like a game, so my motivation is now slightly higher than none. With the base game mechanics done, it was time to do some more UI. I made a retry and a quit screen, which looked fine, but games are like restaurants and they need menus. But we're not a fucking Denny's, so decided to make the menu a bit snazzy with some particles. Things are looking lovely on the menu, but our game world is still looking garbage, which is totally unacceptable in a game about recycling. I changed my sad excuse for grass into a rocky pavement I got on the asset store and added some adjacent roads so it doesn't look like a residential highway or a town with one road. Finally, for something that was slightly less sufferable than the rest of the process, post-process. Added a recycling logo to the bin so it can finally mean something other than a box on wheels, and feeling somewhat good about things, I decided to open FL Studio and make some desperately needed music. Problem is, I do hip-hop and lo-fi beats, not music for piece of shit games. So this time around, I just found 2 songs on YouTube, free for use. One for the menu, and one for the game. Links in the description. Changed my font because it was bothering me and added some tutorial text for all the first-time gamers looking to have any idea what the fuck is going on. Finalized the post-processing, added a trail for the recycling items, and added a little live system and UI elements. The player now has 3 lives, and if they let a recycling item go, they lose 1. The player can also lose if they fall too far behind, which can happen from any obstacle, or if the player tries to leave the game space. Last thing was to increase the difficulty over time, which I simply did by increasing the player's speed the further they got, and increasing the frequency of obstacles. With only 2 hours left, I built my game to Windows and WebGL versions, created some art, screenshots, bada bing, I'm depressed, and we've done it. I uploaded both files in the weekly Game Jam submission, and that's it, a game in 72 hours. Hey, thank you guys so much for watching. This is my first full-length video as part of this channel, and I really put a lot of effort into it. I think my work process wasn't the most efficient this time around with the game, but documenting this whole thing has made me realize it. Plus, I have a big trial list of features I wanted to add but couldn't, so next video I'll try to get around to those changes so I can make some post-release updates and really get the game where I want it. In the meantime, go play it on itch.io, link in the description. Drop a like if you like the video, of course, and be sure to subscribe for more content. I'm experimenting with my format, so give me some feedback in the comments if you have any, whether it be about the games I'm making, my editing and video style, whatever. I just want to hear from you. I definitely want to hear from whoever happens to be watching a channel this small, so let me know. Lastly, if you're watching, I appreciate you, and thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great day, night, whatever. I'll see you in the next video.